The wind howled through the San Juan Mountains, a bitter wail that shook the pines and rattled the timbers of Elias Kane's cabin. At 52, Elias was a man forged in solitude, his grizzled beard flecked with frost, his gray eyes as weathered as the granite peaks around him. Known in Silverton, Colorado, as the Lonely Mountain Man, he'd lived alone for 20 years, seeking refuge from a past he kept locked away, a wife lost to illness, a son to his own demons. His cabin, perched on a ridge above a frozen valley, was his sanctuary, its walls thick with silence. But on this December morning in 2025, as dawn bled gold across the snow, a scream tore through the quiet, sharp and desperate, echoing from the old miner's shack up the ridge. Elias grabbed his rifle, his boots crunching through knee-deep snow as he followed the sound. The shack, a crumbling relic of the silver boom, stood half-buried in drifts, its timbers rotting under a century of neglect. As he crested the ridge, his breath caught. A blonde woman hung from the roof, her wrists bound by rope, her body swaying inches above the ground. Her hair spilled like sunlight, her face pale, lips blue from the cold. Burned into the shack's splintered door were the words, "Apache Lover," in charred, jagged letters, the air still heavy with the scent of scorched wood. Rage surged in Elias's chest, a fire he hadn't felt in years. He dropped his rifle, pulled his knife, and cut her down, catching her as she collapsed. "Hold on, ma'am," he said, his voice rough as gravel. Her eyes fluttered open, green and sharp, filled with fear and something fiercer, defiance. He carried her to his cabin, her slight frame trembling against him, her blonde hair brushing his cheek. Inside, he laid her on a cot by the fire, piling blankets over her. She was young, maybe 30, her face etched with pain but resolute. Elias boiled water for tea, his mind racing. The words, "Apache Lover," gnawed at him. He knew the history of these mountains, the Ute and Apache who'd once roamed here, their stories carved into the land. But this was no echo of the past, this was hate, raw and deliberate. He handed her a mug, his calloused fingers brushing hers. "I'm Elias," he said. "You're safe now. What's your name?" "Lila Morgan," she whispered, her voice cracked but steady. She sipped the tea, her hands shaking, and met his eyes. "Thank you." The silence stretched, not awkward but heavy, like the snow outside. Over the next few hours, Lila spoke in fits and starts. She was a journalist from Denver, working on a story about the Ute Nation's fight to reclaim ancestral lands. She'd been interviewing elders, digging into old mining claims, uncovering tales of broken treaties. "Someone didn't like it," she said, her voice hardening. "I was camping near the shack. Last night, they grabbed me. Tied me up. Left me there." Her eyes flicked to the window, wary. The words. "I don't know why. I'm not Apache." Elias's jaw tightened. He knew the undercurrents of hate in Silverton, folks who resented the Uta's claims, who wielded slurs like weapons. But this, burning a message, leaving a woman to freeze, was a darkness he hadn't seen here before. He wanted to promise justice, but winter was cruel, and answers were slow. For now, he'd keep her safe. The storm worsened, trapping them in the cabin for days. Elias shared his supplies, venison stew, cornbread, bitter coffee. Lila opened up, her fear giving way to strength. She spoke of her Ohio childhood, dreaming of stories that gave voice to the silenced. "The Ute elders, their stories are everything," she said one night, firelight dancing in her eyes. "They're fighting for their history, their identity." Elias felt a stir in his chest. He'd run from his past, buried his pain in solitude. Lila's fight reminded him of what he'd forgotten, caring about something bigger. One morning, he found a photo in her jacket. Lila, laughing, with a dark-haired man. On the back, "Lila and Tommy, Mesa Verde, 2018. Elias's breath caught. He'd met Tommy Begay, a Navajo activist, years ago in Durango, a man whose passion for indigenous rights had left an impression. He'd heard Tommy died in a car accident. He was your man? Elias asked, handing her the photo. Lila's eyes welled. My fiancé, she said. He called himself my Apache lover as a joke. People always got his heritage wrong. He died before we could finish his work. I'm here for him. Her words hit Elias like a stone. He'd lost his wife, Sarah, to cancer, his son, Caleb, to addiction. He'd fled those losses, but Lila faced hers, turning grief into purpose. The realization cracked the walls he'd built around his heart. He saw himself in her, not the journalist, but the soul carrying a wound yet refusing to break. The storm cleared on the 6th day, but danger lingered. A knock came, Sheriff Boone, his face grim. Folks say you're hiding a troublemaker, he said, eyeing Lila. Elias bristled. Someone tried to kill her. You gonna do something? Boone promised to investigate but warned, keep her out of sight. Town's on edge. Elias didn't trust him. Hate ran deep in some corners of Silverton, and Boone's promises felt thin. Lila, though, was undeterred. I'm not hiding, she said, her voice fierce. This is for Tommy, for the Ute. Elias admired her, but fear gnawed at him, fear of losing someone he was starting to care for. Days later, he found tracks in the snow, circling the cabin. Someone was watching. One night, under a silver moon, he caught a man near the shack, young, angry, reeking of hate. She's stirring trouble, the man spat, pinned under Elias's knee. The land's ours. Lila recognized him as one of her attackers. He named 2 others, ranchers bitter about the Uta's claims. Elias turned him over to Boone, who arrested the men, but the town remained a powder keg. On Christmas Eve, Lila insisted on presenting her article to the Ute elders at their reservation. Elias drove her, his rifle close, his heart heavy. In a community center warmed by a wood stove, Lila read her story, her voice steady as she wove tales of the Uta's resilience, their stolen lands, their unbroken spirit. The elders listened, tears in their eyes. Mary Whitehorse, an elder, stood and placed a beaded necklace around Lila's neck. You are family, she said. Elias, watching from the back, felt his throat tighten. Lila's courage, her selflessness, showed him what he'd lost: connection, purpose. She'd faced hate and turned it into hope. Driving back, Lila clutched the necklace. You saved me, Elias, she said. From the rope, from giving up. Elias took her hand, his voice rough. You saved me too. I was lost till you. Her smile was a sunrise. Her article was published, sparking a national conversation. The attackers faced trial, and though Silverton stayed divided, the Ute gained allies. Elias visited the reservation, helping, listening. Lila stayed in town, their evening spent by the fire, a quiet bond growing. The words, Apache lover, faded, a scar of hate eclipsed by compassion. 2 broken souls had found each other, proving that even in the coldest mountains, humanity could shine.